Good morning. My name's John Gridley. I'm the pastor here. I'm going to just share briefly this morning. Jen actually is going to help me out this morning as well. We've got the kids in. It's okay. There's going to be a bit of noise, but we're going to try and keep things short and then get out. We want to hear Isaac. I think Isaac said he's got about 25 minutes of material with his testimony, so we need to give him some time. If your kids would like to, there is some colouring sheets and activities on the table over there. Please help yourself. Adults can do that too if you would like. We are in a series on vision for Carterton Community Church. We are going somewhere as a church. God's been speaking to us. God's been speaking to us about being a spiritual home and an equipping base. A home and a base. And as part of this series, we've been going through what it means to be a spiritual home and an equipping base. We heard Craig last week spoke really, really well about being a home where people grow. And this morning we are talking about being a home where people find family. I'm going to try and work this out. Could you put my slides on? They're at the bottom of that list of things. That'd be great. Look at that, home and a base. Awesome. We're going to look at being a home. We see this church as a family that welcomes people from all ages, backgrounds, countries. We want to seek to share life together. We want to meet regularly together. We want to eat together. We want to love and support one another. Next week, Josh Marlowe is speaking on hospitality in particular. So this morning, we're just talking about what it is to be called to be a family. We're called to be a family. We're called as the people of God, as Christians, to be a family. We're also called as Carterton Community Church to be a family, and Jen's going to speak a bit more about that in a minute. But as the people of God, as the family of God, we're called to live in family. Back from Genesis, from the beginning of time, family has been established by God to be the way, the primary way that God interacts with his people. It's a social unit which God places people into, and the primary way in which he chooses to interact with them. We these days are so tempted to think about me and God, aren't we? And our individual interaction with God. And that's good, actually. We need to have our personal relationship with God. That's really important, actually. And this morning we're going to hear more about Isaac's and Karis's personal relationship with God. But actually, so much of Scripture is talking about our corporate relationship with God, the family of God relating to their Father. Actually, you know that famous passage in Jeremiah 29, which people use regularly, for I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and give you a future. So often we think about that passage as like, God's got plans for me. But actually, the context of that passage is God speaking to the people of God. I have plans for you. I have plans and purposes to prosper you. God speaks to us as family. One of the key threads in the Bible is a family, a story about family. Starting back with Abraham and Sarai, the promise to two people in their 80s that they would be the father and mother of the nations. The promise to people who don't have any children that they would have as many children as there are stars in the sky. An amazing promise, an impossible thing without God. But family was established through them and through the generations to King David, and then further from King David, the family of God grew and grew until it sort of culminates in this single point of Jesus, where out of which the family of God expands, astronomically, exponentially. I knew Dan would know the word I was looking for. And goes on in past us today and into the future. And we've got this great image or word image depicted in Psalm 22, where it talks about all the families of the nations will bow down before him. That's a picture of our future as the people of God, is the families gathered around the Father. Families of the nations, all the families of the nations, worshipping Christ. That's the glorious end that we're moving towards. All generations are on that journey. And that's where we're heading, guys. That's where we are going, Carston Community Church. That's where we're going, Christians, the family of God. That is the goal for us, is to be gathered with the families of the nations around our Father. But there's more than that, isn't there? God has called us to be a family here. What about this family here in Carston Community Church? And the wonderful Jen Gridley is going to come and share a bit more about that. She's going to grab... great. You don't need that.
Hello, I'm Jen Gridley, married to John Gridley. So this week I was listening to a podcast, actually by Rachel and Tim Hughes, who are from Gas Street, and they will be at Wildfires as well. And they have a podcast called At Home with the Hugheses, and it's very real. It's very, real family. It's like chaos life. And they were talking about creating a culture in their church and about needing to be intentional about this, because there's always a culture. It just depends if it's one that we have created and fostered, or if it's an accidental culture that just happens to be there. And as part of this podcast, they also talked about their family values. And I really liked this. They came up with a set of values for their family using the letters of their name. So Hughes they had. John and I decided we give this a go. So date night this week, we sat down, wrote our name. I just wrote grids because I decided Gridleys might be too long. And what we noticed was it was quite easy to pick up on the negative things in our family life. So I'm going to share those negative values that we came up with. And you may or may not see this. People who are rather close to us probably do know these. So we came up with grumpy, ridiculous, irritating, disobedient, and selfish. Obviously, that's not the culture that we're aiming to create in our home. And it is not how we live all the time. But there are times, believe it or not, that our family life does look like that. And yes, thankfully it's not all the time. And both our children and us do have better qualities than that. So we started to think about, okay, well, what actually do we want to foster in our family then if it's not those things? And we had got a massive list of positive values and thinking about what culture we could create in our family life. And we actually chatted through with the kids about these. We had a chat at breakfast in the morning about what values we'd like and what we'd like our family life to look like. And they decided that they didn't really like the grumpy, maybe a little bit ridiculous sometimes, but irritating, disobedient, and selfish. Actually, they didn't want that either. So, yeah, we want to be fostering a culture that is something that we'd like people to see in our home and that helps us to become a better family. So we started to come up with something more positive, but it's all well and good writing these down. But writing them down is one thing, and more importantly, we need to be fostering these in our home. Yeah. Wow. Thanks for your confirmation,
I agree
John.
with you.
Helping ourselves, both John and I, and our children to grow in these values and creating a positive culture where God is at the heart of our family life. One of our values that actually has been in place in our home for a long time is grateful, not greedy. So when the children, or us, start to be a little bit greedy, we say, Remember, grateful, not greedy. And sometimes that's met with rolling of eyes. And sometimes, actually, it just allows us to have some conversations around what it looks like to be grateful and not greedy. And if nothing else, even if there's rolling of eyes, gives us a chance to talk about it, think about how being grateful has a positive impact on our lives and our feelings, our mental health, and those around us. So we haven't come up with our Gridley set of values yet, but that is something that we are hoping to do. And we're more than happy to talk to you more about what our values are. But I'd really encourage you to have a think about what values you want to foster in your home. That could be yourself or with your other half or with your children if you've got children. And if you've got kids, involve them. Talk to them about what they'd like to see. What do they want to see in your family life? And that's what we've done. But as parents, we still have the responsibility to set that culture. So we don't want them to be driving that forward. We want to set that and then work together to get there. So what about us? What about our church family? So we've been developing and sharing our new vision. And as a leadership team, we're in the process of discussing our values, what type of culture we want to be creating here in our church, and what we want to focus on and foster in this family. And as I said earlier, especially me, John not so much, me more, it's easy to focus on things that aren't going well often. Maybe areas where we fall short and get things wrong. But one thing we want to be fostering here is a positive environment where we aren't just picking up on the negative things, although we do need to be aware of where we need to grow, but focusing and celebrating the aspects of our church life that are going well. And John said to me when we were talking about this that actually Liam Thatcher came to preach the other week, and he brought his mum and dad along with him, and his dad was amazed at the welcome he received. Before he sat down in his seat, 10 people had spoken to him, which was a massive contrast to a church that he had been visiting for a few weeks, where that hadn't been the case. So we are welcoming, you guys are welcoming, and we are so grateful for that. We do hospitality well. Thank you to Zoe. Where is she? She's in there. Thank you to Zoe and her team, because she has led that team really well. And I think that is something that we do really well here. We care for one another. I look around this church and see people who are so supportive. I feel so supported, and I am so blessed to be surrounded by all of you guys. People who genuinely love and care for one another. We value our kids. Our kids are awesome, and we value them and we love them. And there are so many other things. Don't think if I haven't mentioned a particular area of you serving that I don't value that. We value so much in this church. And I do just want to thank you all for everything you do. Okay, this church family is family because of you. And we love you guys, and we are so grateful for all your involvement, for your serving, everything that goes unseen as well. There is so much serving that goes unseen in this church, and we are so grateful, and we are just grateful that we can be real with you. So thank you so much. So before I hand back over to John, you might have seen areas in this church that you think are great and that, values that you think we hold, and we want to hear about that. So if you think there's good stuff going on in our church, come and tell us, because we want to celebrate those. But we'd also really appreciate hearing about areas where you feel we can grow. So as we're developing this vision and thinking about our values, we'd love to hear from you, because we know that we aren't perfect. And actually, that's what a family is. Family's not perfect, sometimes a bit messy. But as a family, we are called to grow. And as Craig was sharing about last week, we need to know what the challenges are too. So please do come and speak to us, come and share with us. And we love you guys. Thank you.